Hey there, and welcome to Ruck Up Buttercup, the podcast that's all about real talk for military spouses and families. I'm Sabrina, and we're so glad you're here.
And I'm Ashley, and together we dive into the ups, the downs, and everything in between that comes with military life. From deployment tips to marriage conversations to PCS chaos, finding your identity and owning it, nothing is off limits.
And I'm Laura. Whether you're folding uniforms, packing boxes, managing the home front, solo, or just trying to make it through another long week, you're in the right place. Here on Ruck Up Buttercup, we share real stories, honest conversation, and practical support for military families.
We talk about the hard stuff, the hopeful stuff, and everything in between. Because military life is anything but one size fits all.
This is a space to feel seen, supported, and reminded that you're never alone in this journey.
So lace up those boots, lift your chin, and let's ruck up Buttercup. Military life doesn't define us. We rise in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ruck Up Buttercup. We are here with an amazing guest. We have Julie Eshelman. She is part of the Building Military Families Network. That is the right term for that. Today we're kind of going to be talking about building military families and building families in general and what that term really means. But we'll go ahead and let Julie introduce herself, tell us a little bit about her military background and kind of what led to her helping create this organization.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on. So I'm a military spouse. My husband and I have been married for almost 11 years now. He is in the Army Reserve, but he's in the AGR program. So it's kind of like, he likes to joke, it's the best kept secret of the Army Reserve because we're active duty, but we're like not active duty. And so it's really cool. We get to live a lot of places that the rest of the military community doesn't get to. Like we were stationed in Scottsdale, Arizona, for instance, which is like super, super cool and better than some of the other Arizona bases, at least from what I've heard from people. And, we found out early in our marriage that we had unexplained infertility. And we went on a 9-year journey with a lot of struggle, a lot of loss, a lot of heartbreak. But we also ended up with our miracle. But that struggle led me to creating Building Military Families Network.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that that's so not talked about. It's not talked about in general in the not just the military population, but in the women population, that struggle of wanting a family and not being able to particularly create a family easily in whatever sense that is, medically or whatever.
We're taught how to avoid it. We're not taught what happens when it doesn't work, right? Like, where do you go to for that? And
Right. So family building, if you guys aren't aware what family building is, it's kind of a different concept from family planning. Obviously, as you get married, family planning is just kind of the next step. We all know that, like you were saying, we were taught how not to or how to as we go as an adult. But family building brings in the concept of, like you're talking about, infertility, but also the options of fostering, adopting, and other ways of building your family that isn't the normal sense of building a family per se.
Right. Yeah. I mean, oftentimes, family planning is a much more common term that's out there and that people associate, using birth control or other, methods. But yeah, like you were saying, family building is really focusing on that. Okay. So now we're ready to start trying to have a family, to have a baby, to do these things, but there's not just one path. It's not a linear option, and everybody's journey is different. Everybody's going to encounter different challenges. And even within the military community, it's kind of hard to make a baby when your spouse is deployed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so our organization isn't just focused on like the infertility side of things too. It's also military life makes building a family
extremely difficult. It's hard, yeah.
It truly does. Even if you're just in the family planning and things are going well, like it's okay, well, we're going to start now. And then he deploys in the next month. It's like, oh, well, that just changed the entire plan of when we want to have.
You get a short notice deployment, or all of a sudden your spouse or partner gets picked up for a school and maybe they're traveling, or, I mean, there's so many different things that can happen in our world that, that's one of the things that we're trying to help our community understand that, we're not just here for infertility or people that are pursuing adoption or dealing with pregnancy loss. It's we're facing a deployment, and that's getting in the way of our plans. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we talk about it on here. I mean, that's what we're here for, is support and community. And so why do you think that support is so critical in that family building process?
I mean, I remember going, starting on that journey, or starting to suspect that we were dealing with infertility and feeling so alone. I was on, Facebook, looking for resources, looking for support, looking for a community that understood what I was going through or had answers to the questions that I had. Mm-hmm. And, I kept looking for organizations, and I wasn't really finding anything. And I was getting really frustrated. And that also caused I'm a little bit ashamed to admit it, but a little bit of depression as well, because I felt like I was so alone. I felt nobody understood what I was going through. Nobody was talking about what I was going through. Nobody was even acknowledging it. And that just felt so isolating. And recognizing that need, around the same time that we were still pretty early in our journey, I was also our FRG leader for my husband's unit because they were deploying, and knowing how much those families needed support in that moment, but also recognizing that I needed support in this other area. Mm-hmm. And I kept waiting for somebody else to do it, and that somebody was just going to be that answer. And after probably more years than I should have let go by, I decided that enough was enough, and I wanted to create that support because I knew it was so needed. And that's, I think, the number one thing I hear when people find our organization and find our support groups is, oh my gosh, I've been needing this for a really long time, or I wish I would have had this when I was going through it. So
yeah, I think that's like a common thread in general in our military community, is that there are so many spouses out there who are looking for that community aspect, whether it is just community, finding a battle buddy, or finding resources like your organization or Deployed Love. And I think that it doesn't help that we have so many people who spread false information as well. Yeah. So like, I think a lot of people get discouraged to ask for help because they're afraid that they're going to be bashed, or like, maybe you shouldn't have a baby, or all those different things that unfortunately as a society we deal with. And having a safe space to come to, I think, is so profound, because I personally have known several military spouses who have gone through the IVF journey, who have gone through and been foster parents, who have adopted. Like, I think I've known someone in kind of any of those avenues, and hearing their stories and understanding the struggles that they went through, because, I can't relate to that. I'm very fortunate that I was able to have a baby fairly easy, but I know, my sister-in-law and a really good friend of mine did not have that journey. And so having that community, I think, is so important.
Yeah. I mean, having people that are, going through that similar experience, that, sometimes we just need somebody that can commiserate with us, mm-hmm. but we also need those people that have been there, done that, that can help us pick up the pieces, yep. can help us take that next step forward and just feel supported.
Yeah, it's so
and feel like they have something.
For like someone to, even just like you're saying, to just tell their story. And I think there's so many people that won't tell their story. It's traumatizing, mm-hmm. right. And it's something that not everybody goes through, and not everybody's going to understand. And like you said, there's so much like criticism for the way that people choose to build their families. And it's hard to have that, ability to go out and tell people your story. And I'm glad that you did. And you were willing to be like, hey, I struggled too. And this is why we built what we have, because it's not always there. I mean, that's how Deployed Love came apart too, is there wasn't a lot of deployment support. Yeah. And mm-hmm. we knew it was needed. And so you had to kind of tell your story and be like, I was so alone in this moment, and now I'm not, and now you don't have to be. And I love that so much.
Yeah, I think it's like a perfect call to action right here. Like, share your stories. I know some want to keep that story to themselves, uh-huh. but your story could truly help another military spouse on that journey, because when we know military life is not easy. We just said that. We have all these hurdles. We're PCSing multiple times. We're having to get new doctors. We're starting treatment over. We are having to do all these different things. And it's kind of like this constant rotation of start over. And sometimes if you have that person who's already gone through this, they can give you invaluable insight on what to do to kind of not start over, but maybe start 10 steps up, maybe 1 or 2 steps before where you left off, to get you on the right track again. I know that was some of my friends' struggles with theirs, and they ended up just saying, forget military TRICARE, forget going through our military providers. And we were stationed in Alaska at the time, and she ended up flying to Las Vegas to do all of her IVF, all out of pocket, because of the struggle she had been dealing with for several years to try to conceive. Funny enough, she ended up having 2 more babies after her IVF naturally. So we are so happy for her that she has this beautiful family. But to get to that point, it was such a massive struggle. I mean, surgery after surgery, she ended up finding that she had a tumor, and that all became, she had to advocate for herself, and she didn't have anyone in her corner. And unfortunately, she didn't really share that with the world until like the day before she had surgery. And I'm just kind of like, what? Why didn't you say anything? Like, I know that I can't, like at that time, I was not pregnant. I actually found out I was pregnant with my son right after her surgery. So I was kind of like so upset to tell her, because I told her and then she had surgery and then she forgot. So then I had to tell her again. And I think that's a hard conversation to have. But also she's like, why were you upset to tell me again? I was like, I just didn't want you to feel bad. And she's like, I'm so happy for you. So like, also at the same time, have those conversations with your families and friends that may not be going through the same thing. But I mean, I know 4 people who have gone through IVF, and they've all had a separate journey, and they all have given, like, we've talked about it, and I'm like, oh, well, you could try this. My sister-in-law went through it, and that first thing she was, hey, I know you had a friend who did this. What did she do? I want all the tips and tricks, because this, like, we're now at that point. And just because someone doesn't go through it, they have that advice for you as well.
Right. Well, they might know somebody in their circle that they could connect you to. Right. And, people don't have to be as open, with their journey, as, I am. I mean, I'm out there, I'm advocating, I'm talking to legislators, I talk to the media and I share, but that's because I know not everybody's comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. But and not everybody is comfortable, sharing with their family. But I think the advice that I would give to anybody that's, watching or listening to this is, you need to tell somebody what you're going through. Yep. You need that support, whether you're telling your friends, telling your family, or reaching out and getting that support, either in a support group setting or with a professional. Mm-hmm. You can't keep it bottled up, because you can't go through this alone. We're not meant to go through hard things and things like this. And I think one of the things that I've learned, nobody wants to be in the infertility club. Yeah. Right. It's like the worst club, but we all joke that it has the best members. I have met so many incredible people just by connecting and leaning in to the family building community, by mm-hmm. leaning into the infertility community. People that I never in a million years would have ever imagined I would be friends with these people. And they're the people that I didn't know I needed in my life. Yeah. All because I took that initial step to try and build that connection. For me, it was getting involved in the advocacy side. I've met so many incredible people. I've had so many incredible opportunities because I said yes to sharing my story. Yep. But I know that that's not for everybody. I mean, I have people that come up and tell me all the time, I'm so grateful that you're sharing your story because I can't share mine.
And I appreciate
it's raw.
It's too raw, and that's okay.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. I think as long as you were open to have that conversation, like you said, with at least one other person, so that they can be like,
because you need the support.
You need the support, and I mean, right. We preach that. Like, I mean, in general, military spouses need the support, but like you were saying, like that community, the spouses in it, like, just have like that extra little like oomph to them because they've just dealt with so much more. Mm-hmm. So they're having to jump through all these other hurdles. Like I said, not even like talking about like the coverage, which is a whole nother thing. I don't know if we're touching on that today. Like, I feel so much anger about that. And it's not even, it hasn't even impacted me fully, but I know that it's impacted so many people on coverage and everything like that.
And I think we're going to transition to like the next question we were curious about is like, what is, you have all these connections with these people and you hear their stories. Like, what is often like the biggest struggle that you think military families deal with as far as like advocating for themselves or dealing with infertility?
It's a little bit twofold. I think there are a lot of people that don't fully know how to advocate for themselves as a patient.
Yep.
I
Well, they
have
don't even know
heard
they can. I feel like
Right,
that's
yeah, they
the thing
don't
where
know
I
that
just
they can
yeah.
that they can speak up, that they can stand up. I was one of those people. We were told, so for anybody that is struggling with infertility, if you are under the age of 35 and you have been trying for 12 months, you meet, the medical, timeline definition, whatever you want to call it, for being able to seek care and diagnostics to see, okay, hey, is one of us infertile, or do we have an underlying medical condition that is
so
making it hard for
long.
us to get pregnant? If you are over 35, that timeline is shrinked down to 6 months. And so when we were, first trying to hit that 12-month, threshold, and we had just PCS to a new location, and my new gynecologist was like, well, you're young, your husband travels a lot. I think you should try for another year.
Ugh.
I didn't know any better. I just was like, okay, you're the doctor, But and I didn't know. I didn't know what
The
I didn't know.
anger I have right now over that is just
But there are so many other people that are told to just keep trying because, oh, you're young. That doesn't mean
you're stressed. You have too much
problem.
on your plate. All those things.
Like,
No.
so, learn from my mistakes. If you meet that threshold, advocate. You need to tell them, no, I've been trying for 12 months. X, Y, and Z society, because every medical society says that you now can, meet that testing. And there are some places that will let you do like preconception testing before you start trying to conceive to make sure that there aren't any problems. And these are the kinds of conversations that people need to be having, that women and even the guys, need to know about how reproductive health works, right? Like, it's the stuff that we're not taught in our high school sex ed class, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, knowing that you can advocate and knowing that you can say, no, I would like, to seek diagnostics, I think is one of the biggest things that I wish I could tell people, is to advocate for yourself.
So we mentioned TRICARE not that long ago, but like, is TRICARE usually pretty good about this, or do we feel like TRICARE maybe is the problem?
So in my experience, and I'm probably like the unicorn, right? Because we're normally not stationed at a military base.
Oh,
we're
yeah.
normally at a standalone reserve center. So we typically aren't seen at military health centers.
Yep.
We're usually seen out in the civilian world. And from the survey that Building Military Families does every year, our military family building survey, in our 2024 survey, we saw a lot of military and veteran family respondents that told us that their doctors within the military health system refused to give them referrals and things like that. That was something that we weren't honestly really expecting to see, and to see so across the board. And so, our survey for 2025 just closed recently. We're going through the data now, and we asked a little bit more of specific questions related to that because we realized that was such a problem. And so it's not necessarily a TRICARE thing. It's a provider, I don't want to say lack of knowledge, but it just might be a lack of understanding for maybe like a family physician, and knowing that, hey, this is the standard. Hey, we can refer, TRICARE does cover diagnostics. Yeah.
Again, it really does come down to that, like advocating and pushing. I mean, in anything that you're getting seen by any I especially feel like on-post providers, because once again, some of them are just, they're in rotation as well. Like they're coming and going, they're getting their feet wet as well. Not to excuse that fact. I mean, as someone who's grown up in the military community my entire life, that is just something that's been instilled in me, that I'm going through a separate topic and I'm constantly having to be like, I need this test done. Like, I don't care that I just had it done. Like, obviously something is not lining up. You have to like ask for those things. or end up switching, unfortunately, to TRICARE
Select.
I was gonna say standard. It's not. I was like, it's not standard. Select, and then having to pay some of these things out of pocket. But you were talking about how TRICARE covers the diagnostics, but like at the next level, like I think a lot of families don't understand or may not know that it doesn't cover everything. So having that secondary insurance that could cover the other costs is really important. So I think a lot of families also struggle with, being able just to do not even have that because they are not working. They may not be working spouse because they just PCS or anything like that. So having kind of all those hurdles, have you guys gotten like any like feedback about like, is that another hurdle like on top of that, like time constraints or the constant PCS, and that they kind of just like don't go those extra miles to go the next step?
I mean, there are so many factors. I mean, we all know military life is complicated, especially on the spouse side where, we're facing things like unemployment, underemployment. I know during our 9-year journey, we PCS'd 5 times in just a 7-year span.
Yep.
So it was like some of those places we were only there for 10 months, less than 2 years. And by the time you move, you establish your primary care, you then jump through the 5 bajillion hoops to get the referrals you need because, they never
and then
want
waiting the months
right,
to
and
get
then
into those
and but then at the same time, you're also trying to maybe find employment, but you're also trying to find employment that's going to be flexible enough for you to be able to go to
all of those
the bajillion appointments you have to go to for infertility treatments. And then it's like, well, no employer is going to give me that flexibility. And so then it's like, okay, well, so how else can we afford it? Like, there are just so many things that factor in, and it's so complicated, and every family's situation is different. Every location you're at is different. We've been in some pretty remote locations where we're driving an hour for everything. And we don't have a military installation nearby. We don't have family nearby. And so, yeah, there's just so many factors that make family building challenging. Then when you add in these extra layers of whether you're pursuing adoption, pursuing fertility treatments, it just makes it so complicated and stressful. And then sometimes it just makes it so evident that people really don't understand what military life is like.
Yeah,
and I think that's an important thing to state. Like you were like, especially those outside of the community, they're like, oh, well, you get free health insurance and free housing, and you're just sitting there going like, but it's not like, it really isn't. Like, yeah, we have a housing allowance, but it doesn't cover the cost. So then you're paying out of pocket for a lot of places, and then the health insurance, like, again, like it is what it is.
It's what it is. It's not what we actually need.
I've been trying to get a diagnosis for something completely separate from what we're talking about for years, guys, and I still haven't gotten anything. And I don't genuinely think I will because of policies in place. Like, well, we don't run this test unless this comes back. But knowing that there are thousands of people who are like, my test scores were the same, but I did have this. And the same thing like infertility and things like that. Like, asking to get testing done. They're like, oh, you're only 22. You just keep trying. Like, no. Like, if you've been trying for 2 years and it hasn't happened, put your foot down. See a different provider.
Yeah.
Say, no, I want this done. If they absolutely refuse, then go up the chain. I think,
Yeah, I mean, the military treatment facilities have the patient advocates, and I don't think people utilize them.
Nope.
That's something that, for us, often being in the civilian care, we don't have a patient advocate that we can access as easily. And even if like the health system has a patient advocate, they usually have no knowledge or very little knowledge of TRICARE. So we're teaching them. So
it is a very different world when you're being seen by a civilian provider. When we were on our recruiting duty is when I had my second daughter, and it was a completely different experience just going through had no idea what TRICARE was. Like, TRICARE, you get 2 ultrasounds unless like you have a high risk of anything. I was like flabbergasted. My doctor with her was like, no, we're doing one every visit. He goes, it's necessary for me. I want them. And so I had an ultrasound every visit that they billed because he was like, I need this as a doctor, so you're going to pay for it. So I think finding a good doctor is really important. So finding that community of, hey, who's gone through this? Like, who's had good experiences? Which doctor is going to give me the best shot at having a child, are going to do everything that they can in their power to make sure that they have done everything, crossed every T, dot every I, to make sure that you are set up with whatever next step you're going to take, whether that is IVF, surrogate, adoption, whatever it may be. And I feel there's so far in between few of those individuals out there, but having that knowledge, I think, is also really important. So I hope that spouses continue to share that information. But again, you have to find that location or be brave enough to ask for that help. Because I think a lot of them are still, people are like, feel like they fail. I know, talking to my few friends who have gone through this journey, that they feel like they're failing as a woman. I can't produce. I can't have a child. This is what I was put on earth to do, and I can't do it on my own. And so they don't like to kind of advertise that. And
but those feelings are so common.
Yeah.
The feeling unworthy. Why can't my body do the one thing that it was like, that it's meant to do, that only I can do? Yeah. I mean, those are such normal feelings that aren't talked about. Like, you don't see people just being like, yeah, I felt unworthy because I couldn't get pregnant. Like, you don't see that. That's not an everyday conversation.
It's not.
It's so common.
I feel like it is so common. And I feel like the few times I've seen it, the people in the comments are just vicious for no reason. So I think it really does cause a lot of spouses to not reach out and get that like support, just because, social media is, it's like that, this horrible aspect to it. I mean, it can be wonderful, but we talk about that all the time. Horrible, but good. But don't feel afraid. Like, if you see someone or know someone who knows somebody, like, be like, hey, connect me. If you're not willing to kind of go down that social avenue, which I don't blame a lot of people for not posting in today's society.
Yeah. Never read the comments.
Yeah.
Especially on media stuff.
Oh my gosh.
I have it hard. I will not read the comments because people are nasty.
They are. It's sad.
Like, unnecessarily nasty.
Well, and you're already going through one of the most difficult things that you will go through in your life, that you don't need to put yourself down the road of more hardship. And so if you're listening to this, like, please take that with a grain of salt of, like, don't not utilize social media, but find the right avenue, find the right community to ask those questions, to express your frustration, to express, all that, because they're valid. Like, even if someone else doesn't think that your feelings are valid, your feelings matter. Your thoughts, your hopes, your dreams, they all matter because they're important to you. And who cares what Negative Nancy in Timbuktu was saying about it, because she, whatever the reason may be. So don't let those Negative Nancys stop you from finding the support you need, or taking that step to going, okay, I really want a child. So what's next? Like, don't let someone say, well, why are you going with a surrogate, not just adoption?
Right. And that's a good transition into that. It's like, building family also looks a different way too. So we wanted to mention and talk a little bit about foster, surrogacy, adoption, and things like that, because I've had friends, lots of them actually, that have fostered and gone through that process. And it is very difficult when you're in the military because of PCSing, because of deployments. It all looks incredibly different than what a normal foster family or something like that would look like.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think one of the things that, in the family building community, what people in the community oftentimes will hear from those that have not experienced any of these challenges is, they'll hear things like, well, why don't you just adopt? Why don't you just foster? Or can't you just get a surrogate? And what people don't realize is that any path has, its advantages, it has its disadvantages, it has its challenges, and it's all a personal choice.
Mm-hmm.
IVF is not a guarantee. Adoption is not a guarantee. Surrogacy, not a guarantee. Like, none of these things are a guarantee. It's all, I hate to say it, but it's all a game of chance.
Yep.
And they're also all very expensive, very emotionally taxing, and that is something that each family has to go in and make their own choices for. It's not something that it's like, oh, I can just go into this because like this is just like the next logical option. And it's not. Adoption and fostering has its own considerations, just like, pursuing medical treatments like IVF. They have different choices. But, like you guys were saying, like, adoption and things like that are challenging when you're constantly PCSing, or when maybe your spouse or your partner is deployed and they're not there when the home studies are taking place, or when a potential mother wants to meet. And yeah, I know adoption isn't part of my story, so I can't really speak to it too much other than what I've heard from families and stuff. But yeah.
I think a lot of people think that fostering is like an easy way in, because on a financial side, it is. You get paid to foster. That is a situation where you're not paying for it yourself. However, the heartbreak that I have seen from the two families that I was really close with in this situation is awful. And if you get orders for somewhere, you're going to have to end that foster care situation, because there's visitations, there's county lines, there's state lines that you just can't cross with those children. And it's heartbreaking to have had that child. Like, I had a friend who had one from an infant until she was 2 and had 2 PCS, and there was no bending. There was no willingness to bend even. They were only moving a state away, and it still was like, no, we can't do that. So like, there's loss. There's a lot of heartbreak and a lot of loss in that as well. And it's incredibly difficult.
I think I think there's so many families who would want to foster. Like, I'm one. I would love to foster, but because we're a military family and we move constantly, I know that that's not something that we could actually do. Like, in this season of life, that's not something we can do. My family, my grandparents were big. They were foster parents growing up. You can do it, but I think that it's for those families who are kind of in those seasons that are, so like if they're long-term staying there, or they choose to have their service member geobatch, whatever the case may be. I have a really dear friend of mine whose husband worked with my husband. This was back in like 2020. She had fostered several kids and then ended up fostering. So the 3 that she fostered, her last 3 that she fostered, they ended up adopting. But it took 4 years to go through all of the different things, and all of that work and time and dedication to adopt these children of all ages. One was an infant. They've had her since she was an infant. And then 2 are older siblings. But they all come, like, fostering comes with unique challenges as well. You're having children who are coming from homes that are broken, or they're coming with behavioral problems. And you have to be set up for all of those. And it's not easy taking a child in who is diagnosed with a behavioral disorder. Someone who's worked with them closely, who 100% would have adopted any single one of them when we were I worked in that field when we lived in Alaska. There's so much more that goes into it. There's respite, there's counseling, there's therapies, there's all these different things that can go into place when you're fostering, that a spouse who's been trying to get pregnant for several years may not be mentally capable of handling those situations. So again, that may not be an avenue. Just outright adopting is also not something super simple. I have one friend who did adoption, and if I remember correctly, her journey, or I grew up with the husband, but their journey couldn't get pregnant. They tried IVF, not successful because it's not guaranteed.
Right.
And they ended up they went the adoption route. I believe their first 2 adoptions fell through. Like the first 2, one last minute decided to go with another family. Another one last minute decided that, oh, nope, I think I want to keep the baby. And the third, I think it was 2 or 3 times. The third time, she had 12-hour notice, guys. So the spouse finally, or this woman was like, I want this family. He was deployed when they got their son. And it was one of those things where she's like, I don't want to do this journey alone, but this is what we've been waiting for. And we've been waiting and praying for this for years. So it's not an easy journey, and it's not as simple as like filling out some paperwork and throwing some money at an organization.
Right.
But a child, there's
like, you need lawyers, there's contracts, there's agreements, like depending on which avenue you go.
You don't make a lot of money, y'all. Like if you're listening to this and you're outside of the military community, we don't make these big money that you guys think our military service members.
I haven't had an income in like close to a decade. Like
yeah, on and off, like, but then you're paying for all these things. Like every time you move, it's still thousands of dollars out of your pocket. And, if you're moving to an area where the schools are poor, if you have other children, maybe you're paying for private school, which is stupid expensive because you don't want them to go to public school or they can't go to public school or whatever the case may be. There's so much more that goes into military life that I think, especially our civilian counterparts, just doesn't realize.
Too, like the other story that I have with another family that fostered is her husband was special forces. And so what ended up actually happening is they had a son they had been fostering who had trauma and had all these things. And as her husband was in and out of the house for deployments on and off, it actually ended up making things worse, and they had to give him back because it was like the experiences of military life, and our kids can attest to that, are stressful, and they are so traumatizing to kids, especially kids who don't understand that, whose dad left and never came back. Like these situations where
especially if they're coming from a home where they're ripped away from a family member, and then they make a connection with the service member, and then they're having to leave.
Exactly.
And so that, yes, like it is one of those things where, like, especially, if you're a military family who's not making this a long-term career, like we know that that's the case. Like we know we have families that are, we're doing 4 years and that's it. Like we are in agreement, whatever the case may be. And you're using that time to go through the medical processes and stuff as you have coverage. I think this is a great avenue for you to kind of start that process. But if you are someone who's long-term career, 20 plus years, that avenue may not be the best because there are those struggles and those hurdles on top of the things like, okay, that child has already got trauma. And now that it's triggered every single time that service member, I mean, even for one night away, like, where's dad? Or where's like, it's hard. I mean, it's already hard on, families that, are by the kids that are used to the lifestyle.
Oh yeah, my daughter is like still clinging to my husband because we're at ROTC right now. And so he was gone for the summer, at cadet summer training. And we're still, it's like 6 months later, she's still like, is like worried daddy's not going to come home from work. Like,
yeah, I understand that. I have one tip, especially if you are a military family who is going through that process of adoption, fostering, and they have a strong connection. Get a daddy doll. My daughter doesn't go anywhere without her daddy doll. I got those for her when we returned to a line unit. So my daughter was born when we were on recruiting duty. And when we returned to a regular Army unit where he was going to the field, going on deployments, long-term, I bought both of my kids one, and she sleeps with it every single night. She brings it with us every, majority of places we go. And it's definitely been one of those really great coping mechanisms for her when she's feeling sad. I'm like, okay, go get dad and let's snuggle. She sleeps with him every single night. Like she will not go to bed if she doesn't have him. And it's been one of those things where I've always taught her since she was little, like, okay, dad's still here. Like you have a picture of dad. He's not gone. He's just in a different place, able to call when he can. And I think there's a lot of things in place now than there weren't like maybe a few years ago that can help with that. But again, it's still that struggle that you have to like hurdle over to get to have a child. And so it's just not that easy.
Yeah.
So that can kind of transition us back to talking a little bit more about your organization and how it is that you guys are supporting. Like, how are you guys bringing this network to people who desperately need it?
Yeah, so we have our monthly support groups that meet. We currently offer our infertility groups, our pregnancy and infant loss group, and then our pregnancy after. And so we are also hoping that here in 2026 to be adding a few more. We're hoping that we will find the right volunteer to lead an adoption group, for example, because we know that, people have so many questions, or that it can be a long process that is sometimes filled with heartbreak, that we want to be able to offer that. And then we have our education center that we are constantly, trying to expand and add more content, to help people understand, what are some of the common causes of infertility. If I suspect I have infertility, what should I be doing? What are my options, for family building? What does TRICARE coverage? What are the current policies? Because those sometimes change. And, we do our best to keep up with all the policies and things like that. And then we have our resource library. I think our two most popular pages on our resource library are our fertility clinics that we have found that offer military discounts. So if you're listening and there's one on our website, and we're missing something from our website, a clinic that offers a discount, please let us know. There's only so much research that I can do, and know that any of our resources that are listed on our website are vetted. We go through and we vet and we verify everything before it gets put on our website. And so the fertility clinics, and then our financial resources, where we have a growing list of organizations that offer grants, whether it's for adoption or for fertility treatments. And we have other resources, but those are our most popular pages. And then I mentioned it earlier, we do have our annual military family building survey. Unfortunately, it is closed right now. We're hoping to release our findings and our full report this spring. And then that will open. We're hoping to do the survey a little bit earlier in the year and launch it more like September or October, so that it's before the holiday season for this year. And then I will share a little secret. In the next few months, we are going to be launching our virtual Facebook group support group. So we are going to be bringing our support groups, not just in our monthly Zooms, but we are going to be bringing that onto social media in private groups for people that maybe can't attend our monthly groups, but are still looking for that supportive community. So make sure you're following our social media for when we launch that, but that is something fun and exciting that I'm going to share with you guys.
Yeah, that's so exciting because it's needed. And I think that's going to give more accessibility and more visibleness on you guys, because it's going to be something that can be easily shared across networks. And I wanted to touch on the survey. I saw somebody post about this today. Maybe it was this morning. If you guys see the surveys, please fill them out. They're so invaluable to organizations to continue to grow their mission and to continue to find more support for whatever that topic may be. If you feel that the question is not necessary, it's on there for a reason. I've seen several other organizations put out surveys for various topics that affect military families. And the one I saw this morning was about what is your reproductive health like? And they're like, we decided to decline that question. And I'm like, but why? They're asking because they want to know, are you having struggles? Is this something we need to continue to listen about in these meetings about policy change and having coverage change and things like that? It's so important. So if you see these surveys being posted, please fill them out. Number one, encourage other military spouses to fill it out. So that way, individuals like us who are all advocating for military policy change and more support can make sure that we have the data to back it up. Like,
right. Congress wants
it's so important.
Congress wants numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big part of why we created a survey that was dedicated to the family building community, was because there wasn't a survey that honestly went the places we went with the survey. Like we're asking some of those nitty gritty, questions, about trying to conceive, about, what options you were considering, about the financial realities of that. We're asking those questions because those are the questions that Congress asks us when we're in these meetings on the Hill. That's the questions that, military leadership, ask us. It's the struggles that we know are out there that we can't tell that story without you telling us your stories. And that's the same for, any of these other, niche organizations that are doing these, or even the bigger, national organizations that are asking these questions. They're doing it to help advocate for you, but they're also doing it to help inform their programming and to be able to support the community better.
It's not just advocacy also. I mean, a lot of it is also having us all been part of the nonprofit world is funding. If you want us to be able to support you in giving scholarships and grants towards school, towards infertility, we need data to tell people that it is needed. Because if we don't have anything to provide, they're like, oh, well, you have no way to back that. Then you don't get funding. And funding is what makes nonprofits be able to even survive anything. So if you want us to be able to support you in any way, whether it's these support groups, whether it is financial help, we also need information to provide to grant people and other things like that. So
yeah, I mean, we all know there's survey fatigue sometimes, but they are so vital. And there's a lot of work that goes in to creating surveys. Like it's not like we just slap questions together. Like these are very
it's there for a reason.
Yeah, it's months of thoughtful planning, of consulting with, other professionals, other researchers, and, ensuring that we are going to serve this community in the best way possible. And I know that just as much goes into all the other organizations that are doing their surveys as well.
Mm-hmm.
So as we kind of are getting to the end of this conversation, I would like you to just we're going to bring the mood up a little bit, and the thought of like, what is hope, and like, what does that bring to the journey of planning and building your families?
Yeah. I know sometimes when you're in like the thick of it, it's hard to find that hope. But I think something that I started to cling to was I saw myself becoming so negative. I was so depressed and down about my situation that I saw that trickling into every area of my life. And so one of the things that I really focused on doing was finding the things, that I was grateful for that day. And that slowly helped build that hope and in the journey that I could be more positive. I could be more hopeful. Do things suck sometimes? Yeah. I mean, we're being honest, right? Like there's a lot of things that suck about military life sometimes, but I had to lean into what was good. What could I control? What did I want? And I think that's also how I shifted into that advocacy space too, because I wanted to do something positive. I didn't necessarily have control over where my family building journey was going to go and what those outcomes were going to be. I could be hopeful. I could take action. I could do something with my story to maybe help the next generation. And so for me, that was kind of how I found that hope. For, maybe those that are listening that maybe, advocacy isn't the answer for you, find that hope in, what you're feeding yourself, what you're listening to, who you're hanging out with, what you're reading. And so that you're finding and reading or just ingesting, if you will, positive things that will feed that hope for you. Because if you're always focused on the negative or what didn't work, what isn't covered, what isn't, if you're focused on all the isn'ts, you can't look and be hopeful for the future. I mean, none of this has a guarantee, but there's still something good that you can do.
Well, and I love your tip of the gratitude. I've been doing that for years now. I have a journal, and every night I write down something that I'm grateful for. And I think
I've got my 5-minute journal right here that I do.
As a military spouse in general, that is so significant because there's always something. There's never something like there's always something out there that you're like, oh, this is what's next, and I'm not looking forward to it. But we also tend to not, I feel like we tend to not slow down and look at what we do have. What's great about this duty station? We're here for 6 more months, whatever. Like, how do we enjoy that time that we're here? Yeah. That gratitude.
Yeah. What things do I still want to do here? What haven't I gotten to do at this duty station that I want to do before we leave? Yeah. I mean, there's always something that you can find hope for. There's always something that you can learn from your experiences. I mean, I know that this journey that my husband and I went on has taught me so much. If you would have told me 5 years ago, I would be here, talking about my journey so openly, talking about this, running and founding a nonprofit, like I would have laughed at you. But the journey has made me who I am today.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like the same thing. I'm like, did I ever know anything about nonprofits before I started one? No.
No.
And now it's been my life for almost a decade now. And it's like, wow, this is just something that we became, and it became my story. And I love that too. That you found something that was needed and you created what it was that the community needed. We love that so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we're about to leave, is there any last little thing that, like, a moment of advice that you would give to any military spouse that's in the same shoes as you?
You're not alone. You might feel like you are alone. You might feel like nobody in your circle gets it. I've been there, thought that. And when I started to open up, I found out that miscarriages were so common and that there were so many people in my life that were silently grieving and suffering from that, but also that there were so many people that were also struggling with infertility and with family building and other challenges. It doesn't, I know how lonely that can feel. Just know that you're not alone. There is this whole giant club of people that are just like you, that are experiencing that, have experienced it, and are going to welcome you in to the community with open arms.
Absolutely. So if you're listening and you are part of that community and are looking for any way to get attached to that, make sure that you guys are looking up the Building Military Family Network. We will have that all in the show notes for you guys, so you're able to find their connection. And absolutely, we'll be sharing your Facebook group as soon as that is up and ready, because we love that there's a safe community available for families like this.
Yes. No, I will make sure that I send that over to you guys when we do launch it. We're excited about that. Yeah. But that takes a little bit more work than we're used to. Run a Facebook group.
We can talk about that forever, for sure.
Yeah.
So if you guys are looking for those resources, make sure to follow our page, look at the show notes. That information will all be available to you. We hope that you have found a community in our show, and also that this is something that you may need, that you're able to find those people that are in the same shoes as you. So thank you for joining us so much today. We really appreciated this conversation. And I know there's going to be people who hear this and they needed this.
Yeah. Thank you both for having me.
Absolutely. Well, as we like to say, guys, Ruck Up Buttercup.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.